What if a single cookie? Yes, just a chocolate chip cookie was the only thing standing between someone and the edge. What if an 8-year-old girl sensed a silent scream no adult could hear and answered it? What if a last-minute flight change wasn't random, but a heartbeat that altered destiny? Sounds impossible, too emotional to be true, and yet every detail you're about to hear actually happened. This happened on a Tuesday morning at O'Hare Airport, a morning starting like any other, with passengers rushing, flights delayed, and everyone glued to their phones. But hidden in that ordinary chaos was an extraordinary miracle waiting to unfold. There was a successful CEO who had forgotten how to feel, his 8-year-old daughter who could see emotions through colors, and a young woman at the airport not to catch a flight, but to say goodbye to the world forever. None of them knew they were about to become part of something that would challenge everything you think you know about strangers. Kindness, and the power of attention. By the time I finish this story, you'll never look at a stranger crying that way again. You'll understand why a small decision can ripple across the universe in ways we never imagined. And you might discover that the person sitting next to you right now needs you more than you realize. Sit down, because this is the story of how 3 broken people found each other in the most unexpected place, and how 12 hours changed the course of 3 lives forever. It is now 6:30 a.m. at Chicago O'Hare Airport. The terminal is bathed in the soft golden light that only appears at dawn. Flight announcements echo through the vast space, and passengers hurry by with rolling suitcases and cups of coffee. Amid this organized chaos, Matthew Lane, 41, dressed sharply in a charcoal gray suit, checks his watch for the 3rd time in 2 minutes. Matthew is the CEO of an educational software company, a man who built his life around precision, schedules, and control. 7:15 flight to Chicago. He mutters to himself, opening his laptop. 40 minutes, perfect timing. But Matthew wasn't always this rigid. 2 years ago, his wife Sarah lost her battle with cancer. The grief nearly destroyed him, so Matthew did what many do when the pain becomes unbearable. He buried it. He threw himself into work, into schedules, into anything. Reality didn't require him to feel. Sitting next to him was his 8-year-old daughter, Amelia. The little girl had her mother's gentle eyes and a special gift that Matthew didn't quite understand. You see, Amelia could sense people's emotions the way most of us see colors. She called it seeing emotions, and she saw them as actual colors surrounding everyone. That morning, Amelia wasn't looking at her iPad like most kids her age. Instead, her attention was drawn to something across the waiting area of the terminal. "Dad," she whispered, eyes fixed on what had caught her attention. "What is it?" "Sweetheart." Matthew answered automatically, still typing on his keyboard. "There's someone over there in gray." Matthew stopped typing. "You mean gray? There's a woman sitting alone. She's surrounded by gray. Really dark gray." Matthew looked up from the screen and followed his daughter's gaze. Across the waiting area, he saw a young woman sitting by herself. She was hunched over a sketchbook. Even from this distance, he could see she was crying. The woman was Claire Jennings, a 25-year-old artist and illustrator from New York. What Matthew and Amelia didn't know was that Claire was on her way home to pack up her father's apartment. Her father, the last family she had died in a car accident just a week before. But to understand how a cookie could save a life, we need to meet the people who made this miracle happen. And it all started with a father who spent 2 years running away from his own heart. Matthew glanced at the woman, then back at his daughter. "Sweetheart, we don't know her, and we have to catch our flight." But Amelia didn't listen. There was something in her 8-year-old heart that the logic of adults couldn't explain. She stood up, making her dad very worried. "Amelia, sit down. We have to board soon." But Amelia was already walking past the terminal. Matthew watched his daughter approach this complete stranger with a mix of fear and fascination. He quickly closed his laptop and followed, ready to apologize for any intrusion. Amelia reached Claire and sat down in the empty chair next to her without saying a word. She opened her small backpack and took out a wrapped cookie, a snack Matthew had packed for their trip. She gently placed it on the small table in front of Claire. Claire looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She saw the little girl with braids and a kind smile offering her a cookie as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "I don't like seeing people cry alone," Amelia said simply. Those words touched Claire like a gentle wave. When was the last time someone showed her such pure, simple kindness? "How old are you?" Claire asked quietly, almost a whisper. "I'm 8. "How old are you?" 25, Claire replied, and for the first time all week, she almost smiled. "Thank you for the cookie." Matthew stepped closer, feeling awkward and unsure. "I'm so sorry. My daughter, she just has a thing for sad people." Claire looked up at the well-dressed man with kind eyes. "It's okay. She's very sweet. By the way, I'm Matthew Lane, and this is Amelia," Claire replied, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Claire Jennings." There was a moment of silence. The airport announcements continued in the background. People hurried by. But in this small corner of the terminal, something important was happening. Amelia kept studying Claire with the sharp eyes of an 8-year-old. "The gray is fading," she announced. Matthew looked confused, but Claire seemed to somehow understand. Matthew didn't realize that in just 30 seconds, his 8-year-old daughter was about to teach him the most important lesson of his life, because sometimes the wisest words come from the smallest voices. Matthew checked his watch again. "Amelia, we really need to get to our gate. They'll start boarding soon." Amelia looked at her dad, then at Claire, then back at her dad. "Dad, today she needs someone. Honey, we have an important meeting in Chicago. Remember, we can't miss our flight." But Amelia's next words made Matthew stop immediately. "When Mom died, I needed someone too. But you didn't let anyone come near us." The truth in those words hit Matthew hard. He remembered the dark days after Sarah's funeral. He recalled the kind friends and family who tried to help, and how he politely but firmly declined every offer. He'd been so focused on being strong for Amelia that he forgot sometimes strength means accepting help. He looked at Claire, really looked at her for the first time. He saw the sketchbook on her lap, a half-finished portrait of an older man. He saw the pain in her posture, the way she held herself together with the thinnest threads. And then he saw his daughter, a wonderful little girl who somehow understood something about human connection he had forgotten. Matthew took a deep breath. "Amelia, what if we take a later flight?" Amelia's face lit up. "Really, there's a late flight to Chicago. We'll get home late, but we'll still have time to help." Amelia finished speaking. Matthew looked at Claire. "Do you want to come along? We'll have breakfast before the flight, but if you want to come with us." Claire looked up at the stranger, the father and daughter appearing in her darkest moment like guardian angels. "I don't want to pressure you." "You're not pressuring me," Matthew said, realizing he meant it. Sometimes we all need someone." He pulled out his phone and called the airline. "Hello, I need to change my flight from the 7:15 to Chicago to an evening departure." As Matthew rearranged his carefully planned schedule, Amelia took Claire's hand. "The gray is definitely fading," she whispered, and the decision to stay, to care, to listen was about to reveal secrets that would show how close they had come to tragedy. Because Claire's sketchbook contained more than just drawings. The airport cafe was nearly empty at this hour. Matthew, Amelia, and Claire sat around a small round table, steaming coffee cups and a mug of hot chocolate between them. Morning light flooded through the window, creating an almost sacred atmosphere around their conversation. "What are you drawing?" Amelia asked, looking at Claire's sketchbook with genuine curiosity. Claire hesitated for a moment, then opened the book to the page she was working on. It's a detailed portrait of a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a gentle smile, but something is still missing. The eyes aren't finished. "This is my dad," Claire said softly. Matthew looked at the drawing. "It's beautiful. You're really talented. I just can't capture his eyes perfectly," Claire continued, her voice starting to tremble. "I try, but I can't quite remember how his eyes looked when he smiled. It's terrible, isn't it? I lived with him for 25 years, and I can't remember his eyes." Tears began to fall again, landing on the paper. Amelia reached across the table and gently touched Claire's hand. "Do you remember who they are? You're just too sad to see them clearly." The wisdom in those words came from an 8-year-old, making both adults pause. "How do you know that?" Claire asked. "Because when I try to remember my mom's voice, sometimes I can't hear it. But then, when I don't try too hard, I can hear her singing to me." Matthew felt his chest tighten. He had never heard Amelia talk about her mother's voice before. Claire looked at the little girl in surprise. "What happened to your mom? She got sick and went to heaven." Dad doesn't like to talk about it much. Matthew shifted uncomfortably. "Amelia, it's okay. Dad." Claire understands what it's like to lose a loved one. Claire nodded. "I get it. Dad was the only family I had left. He passed away in a car accident last week." The words hung heavily in the air. Matthew felt a familiar tightness in his chest, a feeling he had been running from for 2 years. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice softer than before. "People kept telling me time would heal, that it would get easier." Claire went on. "But I don't understand why. He meant everything to me, my best friend, my mentor, my biggest supporter. And now, I'm completely alone." But beneath Claire's quiet gratitude was a harsh truth so powerful that when it finally surfaced, it would change how people understood the importance of this moment. Because sometimes, the people we think we're helping are actually the ones saving us. Matthew looked at Claire, and for the first time in 2 years, he allowed himself to truly see someone, to feel someone else's pain instead of running from it. "I know a thing or two about being alone," he said softly. Claire looked up at him. "You do. When Sarah, my wife, died, I thought the best thing I could do for Amelia was to be strong. No crying, no breaking down, no letting anyone see how lost I really was." Amelia listened intently, her father, hearing him talk about her mother in a way he never had before. "But the truth is," Matthew went on, "I wasn't strong at all. I was scared to feel that pain, scared to break down, scared of Amelia seeing me as someone who wasn't fully in control." He paused, looking at his daughter. "I didn't realize that by trying to protect you from my pain, I was also protecting you from my love." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes. "Dad, I want to cry with you. I want to talk about Mom. But you always change the subject." Matthew felt something crack inside his chest. "Oh, sweetie, I'm sorry. I usually cry alone in my room at night," Amelia admitted, "because I miss Mom, but also because I miss Mom. Even though she's right there, she feels distant." The honesty in his daughter's words unlocked something in Matthew he had held tight for 2 years. Tears began to fall down his face, the first he had allowed himself since Sarah's funeral. Claire watched this father and daughter share a conversation they should have had 2 years ago, and she felt something shift in her heart. "I love you so much," Claire said to Amelia. "Sometimes adults don't know how to show love when they're hurting." "I know," Amelia said simply. "That's why your colors got all mixed up. But now they're starting to clear up." Matthew looked at his daughter through tears. "I've seen your emotions all this time, haven't I?" Amelia nodded. "You have gray hair too, Dad, but not as black as Claire's hair. Your gray hair has a bit of blue in it." "What does blue mean?" Claire asked. "Blue means hidden love," Amelia explained matter-of-factly. This was the moment years of buried pain finally shattered and broke free. When a father and daughter have the conversation they should have had 2 years ago, but their healing process was about to be interrupted by someone who represented everything wrong with our disconnected world. That moment was broken by a loud, agitated voice from a nearby customer service desk. "I booked this flight 3 weeks ago. I have an important meeting at 10 o'clock. This is completely unacceptable." Everyone turned to see a man in an expensive but wrinkled suit arguing with an airline employee. This was Trent Maddox, 35 years old, and clearly having a very bad morning. "Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience," the airline worker said patiently, "but a passenger changed their booking from tonight's flight to this morning's, and we had to accommodate them." Trent's eyes scanned the terminal and stopped at Matthew, Amelia, and Claire sitting at their table. There was something in his expression that suggested he was putting 2 and 2 together. He walked over to their table, his face flushed with anger. "Excuse me," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I didn't think any of you were the passengers who decided to change flights last minute." Matthew looked up calmly. "I changed my reservation, yes. Is that a problem? Is that a problem?" Trent's voice rose. "I have the most important meeting of my career in 3 hours, and now I'm stuck on standby." Because of your personal issues, Claire began to stand. I'm sorry. This is my fault. I should go. Sit down, Trent snapped at her. Let me guess. A family emergency. Relationship drama. Someone's feelings got hurt. The cruelty in his voice made Amelia shrink back by her father's side. Matthew stood up, his protective instincts fully activated. Sir, I think you need to calm down. Calm down, Trent sneered bitterly. Do you know what you're doing? The world doesn't stop for people's emotional problems. Some of us have real responsibilities. He pointed at Claire. People like her cry in airports over whatever personal crisis they're going through. You're all so selfish. Life is tough. It's hard for everyone. Handle it privately instead of making it everyone else's problem. The words hit Claire like physical blows. She was fragile, doubting her own worth, and this stranger's verbal attack threatened to shatter what little strength she had left. But before Matthew could react, before Claire could run away, another voice joined the conversation. Enough. Just when it seemed like cruelty might win over compassion, a voice came from the shadows. Someone who had been watching everything unfold. Someone who understood what was truly at stake. What he revealed next would calm the anger and reveal the real miracle happening right before their eyes. That voice belonged to Arthur Bell, a 68-year-old man sitting nearby quietly reading the newspaper. He had been watching the whole interaction unfold, and now he stood up with the quiet dignity of someone who had truly experienced loss. I said enough, Arthur repeated, looking Trent straight in the eye. Oh great, another one, Trent muttered. Hey, old man, this doesn't concern you. Arthur slowly stepped toward their group. His movements were deliberate, and there was something about his presence that caught their attention. Actually, it does concern me, Arthur said softly. I've been sitting here since 5 a.m., watching everything that's happened. He looked at Trent with steady eyes. I've seen an 8-year-old girl see something you completely missed. I've seen a father learning how to feel again. And I've seen a young woman drowning find a life preserver. What are you talking about? Trent asked. Arthur turned to Claire, his face incredibly gentle. Young lady, I recognize your eyes. I've seen them in the mirror. Claire looked up at him. There was something in his voice that cut through her shame and fear. 30 years ago, Arthur continued, my wife died in a car accident. I sat alone in the hospital waiting room for 8 hours. 8 hours. Hundreds of people passed by. Me, doctors, nurses, visitors, patients. Not one stopped to ask if I was okay. The station seemed to grow quieter with their passing. I went home that night to an empty house, seriously considering ending my pain for good. Claire held her breath. The only thing that stopped me was a call from my neighbor's 6-year-old daughter. She had heard the alarm earlier and wanted to make sure I was okay. A 6-year-old child showed me more compassion than any adult all day long. Arthur looked at Amelia. Today, I witnessed this little girl do what that child did for me 30 years ago. She saw someone in pain and acted out of pure love. He turned to Trent. You want to know what's wrong with this world? It's not that people show too much emotion, but that people like you think kindness is weakness and believe compassion is inconvenient. Trent's anger softened under Arthur's steady gaze. This man, Arthur nodded towards Matthew, had changed his flight because his daughter reminded him of what it means to be human. That little girl saw what you couldn't see. Sometimes, just being there for a stranger is the most important thing you can do. He looked straight at Claire. And you, my dear, you are not a burden. You are not an inconvenience. You are a person who is grieving, and there's nothing shameful about that. Arthur's words brought a sacred silence to that crowded airport terminal, but what he was about to reveal would show everyone present that they had just witnessed something far more important than a random act of kindness. They had witnessed a fragile moment between life and death. Arthur looked directly at Claire, his eyes full of understanding and compassion. My love, he gently said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Claire looked at him, somehow knowing this man was seeing her more clearly. Then she saw herself. When you came to the airport this morning, were you planning to go home? The question hung in the air. Matthew and Amelia couldn't grasp its weight, but Claire did. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I had a ticket to Chicago, she whispered. "That's not what I asked," Arthur said kindly but firmly. "Are you planning to go home?" Claire's calm finally broke completely. The truth spilled out through her tears. "I'm not going to Chicago to clean out my dad's apartment. I'm going to the bridge where he proposed to my mom." She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. Everyone understood. Matthew felt the blood drain from his face. Amelia, with her extraordinary intuition, somehow sensed the seriousness of what was being revealed. "The gray around you is very dark because you're about to turn gray forever," Amelia whispered. Claire nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I had planned everything. I wrote letters, made arrangements to clean out my apartment. I thought no one would really miss me." Arthur nodded with the understanding of someone who stood on that edge before. "But then this little angel sat down beside you and offered you a cookie, and her dad changed his flight," Claire continued, "and for the first time in a week, someone treated me like I mattered." Matthew was struggling to process what he was hearing. His simple act of kindness, his daughter's innocent compassion, had truly saved a life. "Claire," he said, voice trembling, "I didn't know. How could you?" She answered, "I was just a stranger crying at the airport, but you saw me. Really, you saw me and chose to care." Amelia stood up from her seat and hugged Claire tightly. "I'm so glad your hair didn't turn gray forever," she whispered. At that moment, the full weight of what had happened began to press down on them. A life had been saved not through grand heroic acts, but through the simple choice to see and to care. But this was just the beginning of how one moment of compassion would continue to ripple outward. 2 hours later, they were still sitting in the same coffee shop, but everything had changed. The morning rush had passed, leaving them peaceful, quiet. Claire pulled out her sketchbook again, but this time she was drawing something different. "What are you working on now?" Amelia asked, looking over Claire's shoulder. Claire turned the sketchbook around to show them. It was a portrait of Amelia sitting between Matthew and Claire, all three smiling. But what stood out was that Claire had captured something invisible: the warmth, the connection, the sense of belonging that had formed between them. "That's beautiful," Matthew said, and he meant it. "You caught something special here. Amelia taught me something important today," Claire said, looking at the little girl. "She taught me that kindness doesn't need a reason, and sometimes strangers understand us better than the people who've known us all our lives." She closed the sketchbook and looked at both of them. "I want you to know you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" Matthew asked. "Hope," Claire said simply. "The belief that there are still good people in the world. The understanding that I'm not as alone as I thought." Matthew pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts. "Claire, I want to ask you something. My company is looking for an illustrator for educational software. We also sponsor an art co-op in Chicago that provides studio space for emerging artists." Claire's eyes widened. "Are you serious? Very serious? If you want a fresh start, we might just need a talent like you. And more importantly, you'll become part of a community of artists who always support each other." For the first time since her dad passed, Claire felt something other than despair. She felt capable. "I don't know what to say." She whispered, "Say yes." Amelia interrupted, "Say yes so we can be friends, and you can teach me how to draw people's emotions." Claire laughed through her tears. It was her first genuine laugh in weeks. "You already know how to see people's emotions. You just need to learn how to put them on paper. Can you teach me?" Amelia asked. "I'd love to," Claire replied. And she realized she truly meant it. As hours passed at the airport cafe, something beautiful was taking shape. Not just healing, but hope. Not just connection, but transformation. And Claire was about to give something that symbolized everything today had taught them about new beginnings. The evening flight to Chicago was finally boarding. The three of them stood in line together, but they weren't the same people who had started the day. Matthew was more open, more present, more himself. Claire's cheeks had color again, and her eyes were full of hope. And Amelia. Yes, Amelia was still the smart little girl she'd always been. But now she was surrounded by adults who truly saw her talent. Once they settled into their seats on the plane, Claire took out her sketchbook. More time. She turned to the portrait of her father she hadn't been able to finish that morning. With steady hands and bright eyes, she began to clean up the eyes. "Now I can really see them," she said softly, his eyes full of pride for me. When he was happy, when he said he loved me. She worked quietly while Matthew and Amelia watched. When she finished, the portrait was complete and perfect. Her father's eyes shone with all the love and pride she remembered but thought she'd lost. Matthew said, looking at the finished drawing, "He'd be so proud of you." Claire replied, "He'd be proud of all of us. He always taught me that the best way to honor those who've passed is to love the people still here." Amelia gazed out the plane window, watching the lights of Chicago grow larger below. "Claire, what colors do you see around you now?" Claire considered the question seriously. "You know what I think I see? Yellow, like sunshine." "Yellow is good," Amelia said with satisfaction. "Yellow means a new beginning." When the plane landed in Chicago, Arthur Bell, who had been on the flight with them, stopped by their row. "I want to thank you," he said to all three of them. "Today, you reminded me why I decided to keep going 30 years ago. You reminded me that human kindness is still a wonder." He handed Claire a business card. "I run a grief support group. If you ever need someone who understands, we meet every Thursday evening." Claire took the card gratefully. "Thank you for everything you said today. You saved my life." "No, dear," Arthur said with a gentle smile. "We all saved each other." When their evening flight finally took off for Chicago, 3 souls were changed, not just heading to a new city, but stepping into a completely new chapter of their lives. But the true miracle of this story was yet to unfold. 6 months later, Matthew was sitting in his office when his assistant called him. "Ms. Claire Lane is here for your 3 o'clock meeting. Send her in," Matthew said with a smile. Claire walked into his office, but she had changed. She was lively, confident, carrying her latest portfolio. "In the past 6 months, you haven't just worked with my company, you've become a standout artist in the cooperative," he told her. "How's the new children's book series coming along? Better than I ever imagined," Claire said, opening her folder. "I want to show you the newest illustrations. They're beautiful drawings, kids from all kinds of backgrounds, each showing so much, different emotions, all treated with respect and understanding." Clearly, Claire's talent for seeing and depicting human feelings had found its perfect expression. "These are amazing. Claire, the kids in our focus group absolutely love them. I had a great teacher." Claire said, "Amelia helped me understand how kids really see emotions. She's so insightful. Speaking of Amelia, she's got something for you." As if on cue, Amelia burst into the office carrying a wrapped package. "Claire, I finished it," she said excitedly. Claire unwrapped the package and saw a drawing that took her breath away. It was a picture of the 3 of them from that day at the airport, but drawn from Amelia's perspective with vivid colors surrounding each person. Claire's figure was surrounded by gray, fading into yellow. Matthew was blue, shifting to green and yellow, and Amelia herself was surrounded by every color of the rainbow. "Amelia, this is extraordinary. I wanted to show you what that day looked like from inside," Amelia explained. "Look. You can see how the colors change as we became friends." Claire felt tears of gratitude welling up in her eyes. "Can I tell you both something?" They nodded. "That day at the airport, I had given up on everything. I thought my story was over. But you showed me that sometimes our story is just beginning in ways we never imagined." 6 months, just that long, turned 3 broken lives into a beautiful picture of healing and hope. But when they reunited, it was clear the ripples from that Tuesday morning had spread far beyond what any of them could have imagined. That Thursday night, Claire walked into the community center where Arthur's grief support group met. She had been attending for 4 months, and tonight she was bringing someone special. Everyone. "I want you to meet my friend Matthew," Claire said as they stepped into the circle of chairs. Matthew looked anxious but determined. "Hello, everyone. I lost my wife 2 years ago, and I think I'm finally ready to talk about it." Arthur, the group leader, always wore a warm smile. "Welcome, Matthew. We're so glad you're here." As the group shared their stories, Matthew found himself opening up in ways he never thought possible. He spoke about Sarah, about his fear of showing weakness to Amelia, about how a chance meeting at the airport taught him that healing doesn't mean forgetting. After the meeting, As everyone said their goodbyes, a young woman approached Claire. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "I heard you talking about becoming an illustrator. I was wondering. My little brother passed away 6 months ago, and I've been trying to draw a picture of him, but it just doesn't seem right. Could you help me?" Claire looked at this grieving sister and saw herself 6 months ago. "Of course," she said without hesitation. "What's your name, Jessica?" "Jessica. Let me tell you something. 6 months ago, I couldn't finish a drawing of my father either, but I learned that sometimes we have to heal our heart before our hands can work." "How do you heal your heart?" Jessica asked. Claire looked around the room, at Arthur, at Matthew, at all the people who had shared their stories tonight. You let people help carry your burden. You discover you're not alone, and you learn that love doesn't end when someone dies. It just changes shape. But the deepest insight was still to come, as Claire witnessed newcomers finding healing through the very kindness that saved her. She began to understand the true math of compassion, how an act of love multiplies exponentially. 1 year later, on that Tuesday morning at O'Hare Airport, Matthew, Claire, and Amelia returned. But this time they were heading to a conference where Claire would speak about art therapy for grieving children. While waiting for their flight, Amelia noticed a teenage boy sitting alone, clearly upset about something. "Dad," she quietly said. "He has dark blue around him. Dark blue with a little red." "What does that mean?" Claire asked. "Angry. Sad," Amelia explained. "Like when you're mad at the world because you're hurting." Without hesitation, Claire stood up and walked over to the teenage boy. Matthew and Amelia watched. She sat down next to the boy and simply asked, "Are you okay?" The boy looked up, surprised that a stranger cared enough to ask. And just like that morning a year ago, a conversation began that could change everything. Matthew turned to his daughter. "You know, sweetheart, I think you started something." "What do you mean, I mean?" "I think you taught us that the world needs more people to stop and notice when someone's hurting, more people giving cookies to strangers, more people believing kindness is never wasted." Amelia smiled. "Maybe everyone can learn to see colors like I do." "Maybe they can." Matthew agreed. "Maybe they just need someone to show them how." As they watched Claire talk with the teen, they saw his posture start to change. His shoulders relaxed a bit. He was no longer alone with his pain. "Dad," Amelia said thoughtfully, "do you think Mom would be proud of us?" Matthew felt the familiar tightening in his chest. But this time, it wasn't from avoiding pain. It was from embracing the love that still remained. "I think she'd be very proud," he said. "I think she'd be happy to know you helped save Claire's life, and I think she'd be happy to know Claire helped save yours." "How did Claire save your life?" Matthew considered this carefully. "She reminded me that feeling everything is normal, that being sad doesn't make you weak, and showing your emotions doesn't make you a bad dad. She helped me remember that the best way to honor Mom is to love you fully. All of you, including those who remember her." Amelia hugged her father tightly. "I love you, Dad. I love you too. So much, sweetheart." Their flight was called, and as they boarded, Matthew reflected on how much their lives had changed. Claire had become family. She had dinner with them twice a week, helped Amelia with her art projects, and became the person Matthew could talk to about the challenges of being a single dad. But more than that, she helped both of them learn that healing isn't something you do alone. It's something you do in community with people who see your pain and choose to sit with you through it. This story reminds us that even the most ordinary moments can carry extraordinary weight through small acts of kindness, unexpected courage, and the simple choice to stay when it's easier to walk away. We see how a single heart can begin to heal another. The journey may not be perfect, but it's deeply human, and that's what makes it beautiful. If this story touched you, consider supporting the person at its center. Sometimes, all it takes is a little belief from others to keep someone moving forward. Whether it's a quiet word of encouragement or just remembering their name, your support could mean more than you know. To the main character of this story, keep choosing compassion. Keep showing up, even when it's hard. The world needs more people like you, and we're all quietly rooting for your next chapter to be one of peace, love, and maybe even joy. If this story warmed your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Touching Tales Hub, where true stories like this one find their way to those who need them most. Let's keep sharing the kind of tales that heal us all.